Hey guys, it's Miko from Emo Sound Lab, and today we'll be mixing Djent with Emo Sound Lab's Wave Breaker. So, one of my bestest good buddies, Callum, is actually a Djent kid, and he has a Djenty track that he wants me to mix, and we'll be using our latest release, Emo Sound Lab's Wave Breaker, to mix this entire mix. He is a true Djent kid, so we have GTD drums, we have submission fake bass, and obviously we have Emo Sound Lab's amp sims, because he just sent me DI tracks. So let's have a listen to what this mix sounds like without any mixing. You get the idea, it's heavy as hell, and then there's also like this chorus beat that is very melodic and shred, and it's all in there. You get the gist of it. The drums, I believe these are GTD, I'm not 100% sure, but you know, they sure sound like Nolly, who is a good buddy and has amazing drum sound, so hey, nothing bad to say there. So let's have a listen to what they actually sound like without any of my mixing. Okay, so maybe the drum processing wasn't really trying to even go for a super authentic kind of a performance. It's going for that Djent sound. Then we have some pads here, which are synth things. And then we have like a boom here. And like I said, this has to be submission bass. The thing about bass like this, I've talked about this before, I don't really like fake bass, but it's very good in the mix because all the notes are 100% in pitch, and you know, I mainly just have problems with the pick attack sounding very unnatural. I'm sure they've done a good job modeling it better, and if you really went into with the velocities and everything, you can make it sound really good, but you know, most people that I hear using these, kind of like what I said about the drums, not really even going for authentic sounding drum sound or a bass sound. They just want to use this powerfully, quickly in the mix to get amazing low end. So the high end I will likely get rid of. Then we got some DI guitar, and I opted to use our latest amp sim release, which is Amped Volcano. And it's basically these settings on everything, besides for some delays on some lead tracks, using a noise gate and tube screamer inside boost for these amp settings, and then blending a 57 on a mega oversize and a mega green, so a greenback and a V30 50-50 blend. And that's it. It's all just this amp plugin and sounds like this. We actually had the bass track in there, just in case you didn't notice. Okay, so that's what we're working with. I'm gonna start this entire thing by kind of going from the master track back down to the single tracks. So this is, you know, the plugin that is on my monitor mix bus track, and everything is going into this plugin. So first of all, I want to have kind of a glue thing going on for this kind of music. So let's have a listen to what that would sound like. Okay, that's already a lot louder and just sounds better overall. I'll aim for some kind of like a minus 10 dB LUFS to get things started out. So already, the loudness that I'm getting out of this plugin. And granted, a lot of that is just volume boost. Like I did 12 dB of volume boost into this plugin. Proper gain staging is a real thing. So I'm gonna start out with the drum bus. Granted, this entire mix have a bunch of gain staging problems. I was just sent this mix as is, and I'm starting the processing from scratch. In a perfect world, I would start with gain staging everything. So for example, in here, I really have to max out the compressor to get anything going. So just bear in mind, because I started this mix from the mix bus and set gain staging there, I'm not gonna do it separately for all these tracks. Okay, I'm already getting kind of a more even kick and snare thing going on. I opted to use the glue compressor. Like I said, I almost had to max it out because of a gain staging issue. But hey, that's what it is. I could add saturation in here, but I actually prefer to do that separately for all the drum pieces. Right now, let's have a listen to the EQ balance overall. Okay, so very minor tweaks because it is kind of a drum bus, so it affects all the drum tracks. Overall, I just wanted to get some air, some sibilance in there. I feel like the crashes are kind of harsh sounding to me, maybe even broken sounding a little bit. So I'm not sure, it could be some processing that's already on the tracks before I got them. So just wanted to decrease that a tiny bit. Also added a tiny scoop in the mids to make it sound more mean. Added a tiny bit of heft to kind of the low end, so this will be the snare low end most of the time, and the toms. And then just getting rid of the subs that I don't hear. Don't want to be mixing something that I can't hear. Now let's go separately into the kick. Again, a gain staging issue, I almost have to crank this all the way up. In an ideal world, I would actually boost the input, but I'm not doing it here. Just so I can keep this comparable, because I want to do an AB in the end. That's essentially it. I don't like the kick sound that much. Or, I mean, it's cool and angry sounding, but I think it's too clicky. So I'm gonna do something with the EQ here. Okay, a lot fatter already. I think I like the mid-range. Okay, that's right. So one thing to understand about Wavebreaker is that everything is gain automated, normalized, auto-compensated. Use whatever term you want. So if I felt like this kick needed more oomph or impact, but I realized the problem was the high-end clickiness, I would only touch the high-end clickiness, because that way I'm actually going to be getting more heft in the sound going into the compressor, because this is pre-compressor. So to get that oomphiness for this kick, I opted not to do anything to the low end or the mid-range, just taking care of the problem that I think I was hearing in the ultra high end of the kick. The snare, let's have a listen to the snare separately. And seems like we have a snare echo track too. It sounds really, really good. Definitely a nollie snare. Let's start with the main snare track. Okay, I can't even compress if I don't correct the problem with the input volume, so I'm going to be doing that just as much as I can. And what I'm listening for here is where I do get the sustain for the snare, but I don't want to hear the ring of that snare, especially when it's that much in the low mids or in the mid range. I don't really want to hear that in the mix ringing out, so I'm gonna decrease the input volume. This is actually how analog compressors actually work. Up until I kind of don't hear that mid pitch kind of ringing too long. Okay, now it sounds like a huge smack with the snare echo. I think I'm going to add some saturation to the snare. So what I'm trying to listen for here is I'm hearing the snare attack, then I'm hearing the actual snare wires rattling, and after that I hear the snare echo sustain. So I hear all three elements in a very natural way. Just have a listen. And I can add the rattle of the snares with the saturation and add more punch with the punch here. So I can actually control all these things quite well separately. Then for the overheads, we already boosted the air from the drum bus, but separately I want to get rid of the low end from the overhead. So something like that. And that's it. So I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. There was a bit here that had kind of a lo-fi drum thing. And for this, I'm actually using a reverb plugin because it was just raw drums. So this Arturia plugin, these are the settings. And that going into Wavebreaker. And I know if I'm trying to make this lo-fi, I'm gonna use all the low cut and all the high cut that I can get. So not really going for any punch or anything like that. Just using a limiter and a lot of distortion in here. And that's it. That's all the drum mixing that I really did. Now the drums sound like this. The volume balance is probably crazy. Snare was too loud. I just lowered the volume of the snare right there. Then for the synth parts, probably not going to do too much, especially for this boom. But man, that was epic. I think I'm going to do something for this pad because it's quite bright and quite dynamic. So okay, so I completely changed sound of it. And now, if you really look at Wavebreaker, you can see here that I'm cutting out all these peaks because I felt like they were quite dynamic and I know it's going to be on top of a riff. And then I've added a lot of distortion with saturation, which will be here, the darker teal that you see here. So the end result is almost like this distorted thing that I hope will sound cool in the mix. I've done this before. For bass, this is gonna be the trickier one, but I'm using amped bass first of all. So without amped bass, this is what I got. So you can definitely hear it's fake bass. If we add amped bass, I would love to have even more gain, but I feel like especially for those ultra low notes, you can't really have that much gain. So just having it right there and then going into Wavebreaker, and I'm probably gonna limit this bass track. Let's see if I'll add some post saturation too. Okay, I did a lot of stuff. Let's start explaining what I did. So I felt like I said before, I wanted to have more gain on the bass, but the low end really didn't stay put. So if I use post saturation, it's a different kind of distortion. So I kind of got an angrier sound this way. So I'm using two different kinds of gain or saturation on it. Then I'm using a limiter to make it super even because I felt like when changing strings on this fake bass, the volume bumps are so huge, it's very difficult to get it sounding natural. So the limiter takes care of most of that. Then I did some masking for the clanky stuff that many times can sound quite fake on fake basses. So I got rid of all the high end essentially, and then even the kind of treble area, I kind of got it even lower. Then to compensate and get, in my opinion, a better high end for bass is around 1500 hertz. That nasally frequency, so that is what I actually boosted in. I did these 2 tweaks for the low end to get more volume. So we're going into the limiter. And if I cut the lows, we're actually getting more presence in your sound because it's going to be taking care of the volume balance thing. So what I'm actually listening for when I'm tweaking this is, where is the optimal setting for getting the bass as loud as possible? Complicated, I know. And then for the guitar stuff, for Djent, I know guitar players love to kind of have a huge low end, especially when they tune as low as Djent, but the reality is you really can't have that in there because it's not super tight. So I'm probably gonna cut so much of the lows out that you're not gonna like me after this. But hey, let's go for this. Listening with the bass, so I kind of can hear it better where this is stepping on top of the bass. So that's it. I wouldn't really do much more. This is just kind of blending the bass and guitars better together. I'm gonna tweak the high end of the guitar to fit everything in here. So let's just have a listen to that. Okay, so I added quite a lot of that high end, and that is actually around 6K, so almost like a presence frequency for guitar. For all these guitar tracks, there's kind of a lot of them, especially when we have these layer tracks. I'm just gonna blindly cut out all the low end out of these. Because once you have so many tracks, I already kind of gave the space for the rhythm tracks. That's a lot. So, actually, I want to hear these tracks because I don't want to cut out something that's like a guitar lead and it'll have no low end in it. Okay. So that's like a harmony. And then we have like an ambient guitar. Then we have lead. I think that was okay. I think that's, yeah, I added a lo-fi to that. The main lead. So a tiny bit more low end on the main lead, but even that got kind of a huge low cut. Let's have a listen to this stuff, and I'm gonna be volume balancing everything. The kick didn't really fit that one bit there. What happened? Oh, it was the toms, maybe? Okay, so this is a tom panning issue. I'm gonna rant. So a lot of people, especially in the Djent genre, love to pan toms like they're 100% width. While, you know, if you really listen to some of the biggest mixes, like Andy Wallace mixes or anything, all the toms are quite central. Because if you really think about, you know, if you think about stage view or even drummer's perspective, tom is almost right in front of your face, like the small toms especially. Maybe like a floor tom will be on the side. And especially if you're looking at, as an audience member from the stage, all the toms are middle stage. Nowhere in the world are the toms on the other side of the stage or here or here, unless you're like Mike Mangini or something like that. So I can't do anything, or I could do many things, but I'm not going to do anything here. That is not going to sound very good. I could add a wave breaker in there and just use like a limiter and distort it and hopefully it'll sound better, but as you saw, I didn't really spend a lot of time mixing. I just did some very overall minor tweaks here and there, but I think we did a big change in this entire mix. I'm gonna jump back into the master bus or mix bus wave breaker.